Okay, let us begin. We're going to begin from Daf Yudalid Amud Sheni, about 5 lines from the bottom, 3, 4, 5. Let us uh, just. I want to discuss just first of all what the Ketoris is. Basically, you see here on the screen is a picture of. Usually, you had a helper. He brought you the powdered incense, and the schus was to put the ketoris on top of the coals, and it made an aroma, a smoky aroma in the heichal, in the main sanctuary. And we also learned yesterday about cleaning out the menorah. We learned yesterday that one of the jobs in the morning, right? You lit the menorah at night, and the menorah is lit all night long in the Beis Hamikdash. But there was a job of the Kohen to clean out the menorahs and take out the wicks and the leftover oil. They did it in 2 stages. They did 5 lights before the Ketoris and 2 lights after the Ketoris. That's what we learned in our mission. That's what, you see, our Mishnah made a statement, and we're going to go into this statement. It's very important to understand this. Our Mishnah said a statement that the Kohen Gadol had jobs. You know, during the week that he was there, that he had a job. And it said, the Mishnah said that he would do the Ketoris, and then he would clean out the Neiros. He would clean out the menorah. So the Gemara asks a question. The Gemara, if you remember yesterday, asked the question that we find another Mishnah in Masechta Yuma, which says that cleaning out the Neiros happened before the Ketoris. So how did the Gemara resolve that? Very simple. That later on Mishnah in the second parak of Mishnayos of Yuma is talking about what? The 5 Neiros that was done, cleaned out first. And then you did the Ketoris. And our Mishnah is talking about the Ketoris that preceded the 2 Neiros. So again, this is only the opinion of Rabbanan. This is the order of the day. The order of the day was the Kohen, any Kohen, they would, in a typical day, they would shech the blood of the Talmud. Then Kohen would clean out 5 of the Neiros. Then they would do Haktoris Ktoris. Then they would clean out another 2 Neiros. And then they would do Avorim LaMizbeach. They would bring the limbs of the carbon Talmud on the Mizbeach. Now, as a reminder, what was the reason why they did it in 2 stages? Because it says, Baboiker. Okay, that is the opinion of Rabbanim. Abba Shaul holds that what? Abba Shaul holds that the Seder Avodah of the day was this. First, they did 5 Neiros. Then they first cleaned out. Before they shechted the carbon Talmud, they cleaned out 5. What interrupted between the 5 and the 2 was shechting the carbon Talmud and the spraying of the blood of the Talmud. So you cleaned out 5, you shechted the carbon Talmud and sprayed the carbon Talmud. Then you did Hatavis Space Neris, the cleaning of the menorah. So after Bakol Mikal Kol, Achrei Kechlesa Kol of the menorah, then you went to the Ketoris and the Avram Mizbeach. Okay, that is an important place. That's where we're up to. Okay, now what is the machlekes? So let's just make it bigger. And we are holding about I would say 5 lines from the bottom. So here we go, 6 lines from the bottom. The Tanya. Lo yetiv es haneres va'acha kach yaktir. A person should not do the candelabras and then do the haktorah. You shouldn't clean out and then do the haktorah. Ela yaktir, you do the ketoris first, va'acha kach yetiv, and then you clean out the candelabras. Again, that is the shita of the Rabbanim, that you do ketoris and then cleaning out the menorah. Abba Shaul Omar Meitiv, you first clean out the menorah. The menorah has to be super cleaned out first and prepared. And then you do the ketoris. So the Gemara asks a question, my time at Abba Shaul. What is the reason of Abba Shaul? The Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, it says in the pasuk like this. The Torah describes the making of that gold mizbeach. Look at the pasuk here. It says the hiktor olive aron k'toris salmon. On this mizbeach, you do the k'toris salmon, the incense. It first says do the k'toris, and then you do clean out the menorah. So here that's the reason of Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul says, first you clean out the menorah, the hadar, and then it says yaktirenu. Then you do the ketoras. So it's a clear pasuk. Rabbana, my kama, Rahmana, Rabbanon. How do they read this pasuk? So now we go to Yudal Ramanal, Tezvav Ramanal, Be'idin Dahatava Teimak the Ketoras. Very interesting way to learn Pshat over here. That what the Torah is trying to tell you, at the time that you're cleaning out the menorah, already there was a smoke coming up from the incense. In other words, this is how you read the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Baboiker, baboiker." When you do the cleaning out the menorah already, you already had the ketoras coming up. While you're doing somehow, when you're cleaning out those last two of the menorah, already the smoke of the besamim of the ketoras was felt. You see, the simple way to read the pasuk is first behetivo esaneris, first clean out the candelabra, and then yaktirenu, then you do the ketoras. But the Chachamim said no. Behetivo esaneris, when you're cleaning out the menorah, yaktirenu, you already did the ketoras. That's how the Chachamim learned pshat in that. Now that's a strange way to learn pshat. It's not sequential. It's actually telling you what was done before. Now, the Rabbanan have a reason for that. The Eloi Teimahachi, if you're not going to say that you do the Ketoras first and then you clean out the menorah, Bein Harabayim, it says when the Torah talks about what you do in the afternoon, the Ksiv, the Pasuk says, Uvahalois Aharoin Esaneris Bein Harabayim Yaktorena. When you're going to light the menorah, then you should do the Ketoras. Now, that Hachanami, will you say that how do you read that pasuk? The Bereisha Madlik Neres, that first you should do the menorah, V'hada Maktik Torah Shel Ben Harabayim, and then you should do the Ketoras. If you're always learning sequentially, that the pasuk is telling you the sequential order, that means you should do menorah first and then the Ketoras. That's impossible. You want to say that's the case? Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, the pasuk says, Oisoi me'erev ad boiker. It says in the pasuk by the menorah. Okay, the pasuk that says by the menorah, it says that where the menorah is, Yarech Oisoi Aaron the erev ad boiker lifnei Hashem. Aaron should have enough oil in there that lasts throughout the evening. And Yarech Oisoi means that Oisoi, that's the last thing that he's going to do for the day. So that's what we're going to darshan. What time we learned in the Brisa, first thing the Torah tells you that there should be enough oil in that menorah that no matter how long the winter night is, there's enough oil that it burns a whole night. And that's the same amount of oil you would use in the summer. And if there was leftover oil, you let it burn a little bit in the day or you blew it out. But the amount of oil has to be the amount of oil that was the longest winter night. And davar acha, another thing that you learn pshat, that davar acha doesn't mean another thing from the word me'erav boiker. Davar acha, you learn another thing from the pasuk, from the oisoi. Me'erav boiker, ein lecha avodah sheksher me'erav boiker. There's no other service that could be done from night till morning, elazubavad, only the menorah. So the menorah, you have to learn pshat. The menorah was the last thing that you did. So if so, why does the pasuk say, how do you read this pasuk? When when you light the menorah, yaktirenu, then you do the ketoras. So how do you learn pshat in that pasuk? What it means is when you lit the menorah, yaktirenu, you already did the ketoras. Prior to doing the lighting the menorah, you already had the ketoras done. So then also in the beginning of the pasuk, where the pasuk says, Baboike behetivo yasaneres, yaktirenu, that when you're going to clean out the menorah, yaktirenu, you did ketoras prior to cleaning out the menorah. And that's how the Rabbanim learn pshat. So that's what he says. First of all, what does the Torah say at nighttime? When you do the hatlaka, you already did the ketoras at night before doing the lighting of the menorah. So also in the morning, when it concerns itself with cleaning out the menorah, when you're already cleaning out the menorah, you should be makti the ketoras. So already the ketoras precedes the cleaning out the menorah. That is the opinion of the Rabbanim, and that's how they learn the psukim in Chumash. But Abba Shaul says, no, nighttime you have, I agree with you. I grant you that at night you have, that's how you read the psukim. That you light the menorah, but the Ketoris was already done prior. Because Shana Hasan because you have a pasuk that says Oisai that tells you that the lighting of the menorah is the final thing done, the last avoida. So it must be that the Ketoris was done prior. I grant you that. But in the morning, you don't have to say that. In the morning, when the pasuk says the Hikter Olav Aharon Ketasaris Sama Boike Baboike Beitivo Yasaneris Yaktirenu, the end of the pasuk. In the morning, when you clean out the menorah, then you could do that the Ketoris. So according to Abba Shaul, it could be you do the cleaning of the menorah, and then you could do the Ketaris, and this first pasuk could be read as a sequential instruction. First clean the menorah, and then do the Ketaris. Okay, so again, we had this fundamental machlokus between Abba Shaul and the Rabbanim. Okay, and that's how we answered a bigger question. The bigger question was, how do you answer a stira in Mishnayos and Yoma? One Mishnah says that Ketoris came after the cleaning of the menorah, and one Mishnah says that Ketoris came before. Our Mishnah says that Ketoris came before the cleaning of the menorah. The answer is, it depends what part of the menorah you're talking about. The Mishnah later on is talking about cleaning of the 5 menorah. Then our Mishnah is talking about the cleaning of the 2 menorahs. Fine. That was one way to answer the teretz. But the Gemara says you could answer the simple contradiction between the 2 Mishnayos is by saying simply, one goes according to the opinion of Abba Shaul, and one goes according to the opinion of Rabbanan. Our Mishnah that says Ketoris, you do the Ketoris before cleaning the menorahs, that's our Mishnah goes according to the opinion of Rabbanan. And the later Mishnah, which says that you first have to clean out all the menorahs, goes according to Abba Shaul, who says first clean up the whole menorah, and then do you do the Ketoris. That's Rav Papa's teretz. Rav Papa gives a new teretz. Like Kasha, it's not a difficulty between the 2 Mishnayos in Masechta Yuma. Ha Rabbanan, ha Abba Shaul. Our Mishnah goes according to Rabbanan, where cleaning of the menorah comes after the Ketoris. Ha Abba Shaul, that Mishnah, that other Mishnah in Yuma, which says that cleaning of the menorah comes before Ketoris, goes according to Abba Shaul. So Maya Kimta Lamasnis Dahacha. So the Gemara asks on Rav Papa's answer. What are you going to say? Our Gemara, our Mishnah over here is Karabanan, pious. The second Perek Mishnah is called pious, where it talks about the lotteries. The second Perek's Mishnah is Ka'aba Shol. Ema Seifo. Let's go in a little deeper into Masechta Yuma, where we have a third Mishnah, and look what this Mishnah says in the third Perek of Yuma. On the Kohen Gadol's service of the day. They brought the Kohen Gadol to Talmud, Kurotzoi. He pierced the carbon Talmud. He didn't shecht it completely because he had always somebody help him with the shechita. Because, as you know, the Kohen Gadol did the entire service of the day by himself. So even the carbon Talmud in the morning, he did it by himself. So he did most of the simonim of shechting the carbon, most of the windpipe and the food pipe. Umerek acher shchita al yadin. Somebody else would complete the shechita by his hands, because the Kohen Gadol had to do something over here. He had to do this. The Kohen Gadol had to do the Kabbalah by himself. So he shechted it, and then he had to grab a vessel, as you can see in the picture, and catch the blood by himself. So everything is done by himself. So therefore, that's what the Mishnah says. So he did the shechita. Then the Torah, the order of the day of the Kohen Gadol, nichnas lahakti ketoras. First, then he did the ketoras. This is right away 7:00 in the morning on Yom Kippur, and then laheta v'saneres. Then he cleaned out the menorah. So this third Mishnah, this third perek, asin l'rabbanan. So according to where Rav Papa answered these Mishnayos, Reisha v'Seifa, the first perek and the third perek, the opinion of the Mishnayos follow Rabbanan. Umitzi Asa in the middle perek goes according to Abba Shaul. That's odd, because the whole Mishnayos of Masechta Yuma seems to have been written by one Tana. It wasn't like patched together from different Tanoim. It seems to be, Rashi says that it's one person that probably wrote the whole Masechta Yuma, because it's one topic. And so how could you have it that the first Mishnah in the first perek, and the third parak go according to the opinion of Rabbanim, and the middle parak Beis, goes according to the opinion of Abba Shaul. Rav Papa says, yes, I want to go with that. I say yes. Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanim, the beginning and the end of Yuma goes according to Rabbanim. Umitziasa Abba Shaul, and the middle one goes according to Abba Shaul. So the Gemara asks a question. It makes sense. Bishlama Abaya loy Omakra Papa. Abaya, who said that both the Mishnayos answered the question that both Mishnayos in the first parak and the second parak go according to Rabbanan, because he didn't want to say like Rav Papa's teretz, because Reisha v'Sefer Rabbanan Mitziyasa Abba Shaul loy moikem lo. He didn't want to say that the beginning and the end go according to Rabbanan and the middle goes according to Abba Shaul. That's not a congruent way to have the author of the Masechta. So he didn't want to give Rav Papa's teretz. But Rav Papa, my time in Lo Abaya. Why didn't he say like Abaya? In other words, you can have a very simple way to answer the teretz, that our parak is talking about where the Ketoris precedes the cleaning of the menorah, goes according to the two neiros, where the Rabbanan said that you first do the Ketoris, then you clean out the last two neiros of the menorah. And the second parak's Mishnayos, where it says that you clean the menorah and then clean the menorah, then you do the Ketoris, clean the menorah first, then do the Ketoris, is talking about the 5 neiros. So that will be very good. Amalach Papa will tell you that he doesn't like Rabbi's teretz either. Tana Bereisha, in the first parak, which is our parak that we're learning, the Mishnah is talking about Hatova Shtei neiros, the cleaning out of the last 2 neiros. And then you go back to the second parak and it starts talking about Hatavas Chamish Neiros, the cleaning of the 5 neiros. The 5 neiros came before the cleaning of the 2 neiros. So it's not right to say that both Mishnayos go according to the Rabbanan. Rabbi says, no. Iruya Ba'almahu de Kamari. Our parak is just not giving you the order. Our parak is telling you that we put the coin and sequestered him, and then we kept him busy with during the 7 days of, we tried to get him to do jobs. In fact, he didn't even have to clean the first 5 neiros. We just got him to clean the last 2 neiros. So that's why our Mishnayos say the Ketoris preceded the second neiros. Besidra ha'hadar tanale. But in the Lex parak, where we're talking about the daily service, what was the order, then we go back and tell you that actually the order was that they cleaned the 5 neiros first, and then they did the Ketorah. So it's not a different author. It could be even according to Rabbanan. But now, that was New Gemara. Okay, New Gemara. So let's go to this picture over here. This picture over here describes, as you know, they would have to sprinkle the blood of the carbon oil, a regular carbon oil. They sprinkled it on 2 corners of the Mizbeach. They first did it on the north. We spoke about this yesterday, the northeast corner, which is right down over here, right over here. And then the southwest corner over there. So the Kohen just went around over here, gave a splash, and then a splash over here. This is how a splash looked. A splash got on 2 corners, okay? It got on 2 corners right over there. So now let's look in the Gemara. And the Gemara wants to understand why you do it on those 2 corners.
Did they clean this off at any point?
That's a very good question.
I mean, you have thousands and thousands a day.
Right.
How would you see where you're splashing? It must be incredibly
right.
Cruddy, full of blood.
That's great. That's a good question. I don't know. I have to ask that. That's a very good question. I would say that if you would, like you're saying, maybe it crusts up, there would be a chatzitza or something like that. If you throw one blood on top of another blood.
But they do thousands a day, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's gotta be wiped up at some point.
That's a good question. I'm going to ask somebody. That's a good question. Gufa, we learned before. He got to the northeast corner. He would put on the northeast corner a splash. Maravas Raimis, when he got to the southeast corner, he went on the southwest corner. The Tana Allah, we learned about this, that Rab Shimon ish hamitzvah meshana b'tamid. The tamid itself, the oilas tamid, you see a regular oiler that I bring, you bring, you did shtayim shein arba, right? 2 splashes. But And a splash, when I say a splash, means you take it with the vessel holding the blood, and you give a spray like that. But here he had it differently. A carbon oil tamid that you brought every day, that the tzibur brought. So he grants you by the first northeast corner. He said you make one splash. Then when you got to the other corner, maravis derimis, when you got to the southwest corner, then nice marava. You first put it on the west, and then you put it on the south. So he had like 3 splashes. So the Gemara wants to know why did on a regular oilas tamid, why did Rav Shimon add an extra splash? He split the splashes. My tamid Rav Shimon isha mitzvah. So let's look at just again to the picture of the mizbeach. As you know, a carbon oil you spray on the ground floor of the mizbeach. A carbon chatas, you actually went up onto the ramp, and they would touch the blood and the 4 corners. So right over here, the 4 corners, he would give he would go like that in that order. You would go counterclockwise. Okay, you give 1 dab, and not with a splash like you do it. You guide the coin would dip his finger and put it on the corners. So now we have a pasuk that says that the Torah says by Rosh Chodesh, we have a pasuk that we read every Rosh Chodesh. It says that on Rosh Chodesh you bring a chatos also, along with the carbon tamid. So he darshins that al oilas tamid means over and above the chatos, over and above the oiler, you should make it like a chatos. That means the oily, really, a regular tamid is an oiler. You should make it a little bit like a chatas. So how could you make it an oiler, and how could you make it a chatas? You start off nice and achas. You make 1 splash. You make 1 splash that goes on both walls like an oiler, and the last 2 ones you split it. Then you give individual sprays when you get to the southwest corner. You make a spray on the west, and you make a spray on the south, because that's like a chatas, which is all split up. So the Torah seems to imply that regular tamid should have some sort of chatas in it. And what's some sort of chatas? You spray it like a chatas by splitting the last 2. So Gemara asks a question. If to understand, that's the opinion of Shimon and Mitzvah. So Gemara asks 3 questions. First of all, maybe the Torah means do shtaim shein arba like a regular oila. On a tamid, you do shtaim shein arba, and then after you finish doing 2 sprays, then you go back and you do arba shein arba kamaisa chatas. Then you do a 1 touch to every wall like a chatas. So you do like double the amount of spraying the blood on the mizbeach. So the Gemara says that can't be. We don't find that you do a spray on an animal and you do blood 1 time, it brings a kapara, and then you do it a 2nd time. That makes no sense. So the Gemara says what you're saying makes sense too. Do we ever find that you should spray the blood like a half a chatas and a half a ola? Ella al karchach, you must say he kishan akosov. That's what the Torah said. Make this oila, make the oilas tamid into a chatas. Hachanami bal karchan kishan akosov. So you could say with my idea too, make this oilas tamid like a chatas. Do shtaim shein arba, and then do individual sprays. So the Gemara says no. Hasa pisik matonus ba'almahi. Over there, what our suggestion is, it's just dividing the last 2, but it's not respraying the whole thing. So therefore, it makes more sense that this is what the Torah means. Torah means you start off, according to Rav Shimon, you spray shtayim shein arba on 1 corner, right? You spray 2. You make 1 spray that hits 2 walls on 1 corner, and then you go around, and then you make 1 spray on the west and 1 spray on the south. So it's just dividing the last spray into 2 parts, but it's not respraying the whole thing. So the Gemara says. Now the Gemara says maybe the Neisiv achashi shtayim lamata k'maisa oila and shtayim shein shtayim lamala k'maisa chatas. What the Gemara's question is, the Gemara doesn't want is relentless. Why don't you do it this way? Why don't you say that I grant you spray like this, make it like an oila, And notice how the oil is on the bottom of the Mizbeach, below this red line. There was actually a red line that divided the Mizbeach. And then maybe when the Torah says to make the oilas tamid like a chatas, you should go back up on the Mizbeach and do the other two corners like a chatas, touching the corner. So that's what maybe that's what the Torah means, that the oilas tamid should be like a chatas. So the Gemara says that can't be. We never find demam that you spray broad that you have a blood that's sprayed half on top, half on the bottom. That doesn't make sense. V'loi, that's not true. But now we learned in the Mishnah, he's the mimenu achas lamana v'shevet lamata. On Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol would go into the, let's say, the Heichal and spray towards the curtain, 1 on top and 7 on the bottom. Now the Gemara has this funny way of learning that he actually sprayed on the curtain, half on top of the curtain and half on the bottom of the curtain. So this is how the picture would look. I'm sorry. What the Gemara thinking is that you spray half, he's the curtain, and behind this curtain is the Oren. He sprayed half on top, 1 on top, and then 1 on the bottom of the curtain. So that's what you think that means. You remember we say on Yom Kippur, achas, ushtayim. That's what we're talking about over here. No, you learned wrong shot, kimatzlev. That he did it like a matzlev. My matzlev, machvi Rav Yehuda kimanag dono. Rav Yehuda showed like somebody who whips somebody. In other words, this is what we do on Yom Kippur. It's not that we're spraying half the 1 blood on top of the curtain and 7 bloods on the bottom of the curtain, but what we're doing is we spray it. You see the hand over here. We spray it. The first one we spray this way on an upward motion, and the second one, the other 7, we do like another motion. And these are 2 ways to hold a whip. I know somebody who told me that he got whipped in Auschwitz. He's still alive, and because in Block 11, and then because he had a relationship with the guy who was doing the whipping. The guy did the whipping this way instead of this way. And if he did it this way, he would have lost his life. And because he did it in an upward motion, he hurt, but he was able to survive that. But 10 days later, he was marched out of Auschwitz. Anyway, this is Mr. Mitgang. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Chazan
Mitgang, that's right. So he says he got 25 lashes. Mengele gave him 25 lashes, but he was in Auschwitz long enough to know the guys that are responsible for giving the lashes. And he saved his life that way in many different ways. Okay, so the Gemara says, Veloy, we never find that you do half on top and half on the bottom. But now we learned in the Mishnah, he's a Mimena al Parish on Mizbeach Sheva Palm. My love, I'll palge the Mizbeach, Kedamre Inchi, Tihar, who palge the Yomit. We know that some of the blood that you sprayed, not only you sprayed on the curtain, but you sprayed on that gold mizbeach, on the Ketoris mizbeach. So what the Gemara is learning now is that perhaps when you sprayed blood half on the bottom of this mizbeach, and 1 on the top part, and 1 and 7 on the bottom. So the Gemara is going to answer similar tarets. You missed because tihara means the Torah says that you should, that the way you do it on the halfway mark of the Mizbeach. So Gemara thought you do it this way, right at this point. You do 1 over here, and then 7 on the bottom. So you do see that you spray half on top or half the bottom, because the Mishnah says you spray on the Tihara Shel Mizbeach. So the Gemara thought that the word Tihara means the midpoint of the Mizbeach, just like the midpoint of the day is the clearest part of the day. So the midpoint of the Tihara of the Mizbeach means the midpoint of the Mizbeach. Amar Rabba Bashila, you learned it wrong. Loy, that's not the pshat in the Mishnah. What you meant, we go to Amid Beis, Agufa the Mizbeach, you do it on the cleanest part of the Mizbeach, the Ksiv, Et Shemayim L'Tor. The word Torah means the cleanest part. In other words, like I showed you in the picture, he cleaned away the Ketoris, some of the coals, he made it a little clean, and then he sprayed the Mizbeach. Then he put the blood on top of the Mizbeach, but not that the blood went half down and half up. It was just always on the top of the Mizbeach. We're going to learn more about the service of the day. Okay, now the Gemara now goes on to another 3 more questions, and that's it. Why do you do the double splash first, like the oila, And then you do the individual splashes like a chatas later on. Nesav bereshich the chatas, v'hada nesav the oilam. First, you should do the chatas, make the double splash, make individual splashes first, and then do a one splash for two, like an oila. So the Gemara says, not true. Even the oila, since really it's an oila, he kagma beresha. That's what you should do first. So again, because it's an oila, you do one splash that lands on two walls, and then you make it look like a chatas by doing one splash on the other opposite walls, on the west wall and the south wall. So now the Gemara says, now the Gemara just asks on this question, a very interesting question. The Gemara says, I told you before that this is how they shaped the menorah. Oh, hold on. Here we go. This is how they splashed. They splashed on this corner and on this corner. So guess what the Gemara is going to ask? The Gemara is asking, why don't they do the splashing on this corner and on the opposite corner? Why don't you pick these two corners? And the answer is going to be because on this corner, there's no foundation. And when you splash, there has to be a foundation. So there was no foundation over here. The only foundation was over here on this side. So therefore, it actually came up on this wall. It's not so 3D, but it's this wall, and this wall had like a yesoid. And then the Gemara is going to ask one more question, is why don't you start this direction? Why don't you go this way and go around? Why do you have to start from this direction? And the Gemara is going to say, when you do things, you should always turn to the right first. And when the Kohen Gadol when the Kohen comes to do splash, the Oilas Tamid, he turned right, and then he, faces the Mizbeach, and then turns right again in a counterclockwise motion. That's the whole Gemara. So first, the Gemara says, Maishna, why is it the Yom Mizrachas Finus Maravis Raimis? Why do you do the northeast first and then the southwest? Why don't you do Nesif Deroivis Mizrachas, do the southeast, Bahadit Finus Marabis, and then do the northwest? Why do you have to do? Why do you do those two corners? Amri. So the yeshiva answer. The Gemara answers. Oila tuni yasoid. When you splash, there has to be like a yasoid, like a little foundation sticking out. The Karen Deroimis Mizrachis, the southeast corner loy have yasoid, as you saw in the picture. One side didn't have a yasoid, a foundation. That's why they went all the way to the other corner. So the Gemara says, why did they go to the northeast first, and then they go to the southwest? Let them go to the southwest first, and then go to northeast. The answer is, whenever you turn, you always try to turn to the right. And that's a halacha not only in kachim, that's always a halacha in everything that we do. We try to do the right. You put your right shoe on first. You put your right sleeve on when you're putting on a jacket, you put that on first. So everything that we do, in fact, even when you're taking a shower, you're supposed to wash your right side first. So anything that you turn should be right. So the way, so therefore, la mizrach beresha hupaga. Therefore, you turn east, and that's why you came across that first. So when you facing the mizbeach this way, you have to, if you turned right, this is the way you would go, meeting the northeast corner first, and then followed by the southwest. Now, the Gemara asks one final question, then we'll stop. Now, the Gemara, according to we just explained is this odd sheet of Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says that when you do the oilas tamid, only the oilas tamid, not every oil is shtaim shein arba. The oilas tamid, you would first make a one splash for two on one side, and then the opposite side you make two individual splashes, because the Torah said the oilas tamid should have like a little shmek of a chatas in there, and therefore a chatas is individual sprays. So therefore, this oilas tamid has to have a part of it that's individual sprays on the opposite side. But the Gemara says, how do you know that the Torah is telling you when you do the oilas tamid, you should make it a little bit like a chatas? Maybe the Torah is telling you the opposite. The seir rosh chodesh, you should make it like an oila. Vidilma, the chatas who the kamerachmar, the other bay mais oila. That the chatas that you're bringing on Rosh Chodesh, you should do make it like an oila. In other words, make the chatas like an oila, not the other way around. So the Gemara says, Loi sal kedaitek. I wouldn't think that way. The ksiv al oilas hatomid ye oseh v'nis goy. Al oilas means on the oila you put the chatas. On top of the chatas should go on top of the oila. My kamerachmana, what this Torah says, midi the chatas. Take whatever you do for the chatas and shadei oila and apply it to what you do to the oila. And therefore, Rav Shimon HaMitzpah has the shita that the oilas tamid, you sprayed it like you started off spraying it like an oila, one spray that hit two walls, but on the opposite corner you did separate sprays over here. So we learned quite interesting Gemara today with the Machlekes Abba Shaul and the Rabbanan, and also we explained the Machlekes between Reb Shimon, why his odd opinion of the oilas tamid, you did a little bit like an oila and you did a little bit like a chatanas.
Thank you.
Where did you end up closing off? On Aleph or Amud Beis?
We started we're up on Amud Beis. We're on Tezvav Amud Beis. We're right about 10 lines from the bottom. Tanan Hassam. Tanan Hassam.
Okay.
We started from the Tanan Hassam right over here.
Okay? Okay,
very good, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.